Normally you play Kansas State at the end of the regular season, so you've got a body of work you can look at. What's the challenges of starting off with this team?
Yeah, Kansas State's always a challenge. Their physicality, how well coached they are, their discipline is always something that, we never take lightly, and we know that they're going to come out and, try to dominate the line of scrimmage for us. And when you play a team, the last conference game of the year, and you turn around, you play them to start the year, it's so fresh. And, a lot of the stuff that we did last year is still, right on the edge of our mind, and the same thing with those guys. So I think for us, it's going to be about taking care of the football and being physical. And this game, Farmageddon's always crazy. So for us, with it being the first game of the year, you watch all those NFL preseason games, and they can be kind of a little bit of a gong show, and you see the teams that beat themselves. So for us, it's going to be a really good challenge. Those guys, like I said, are so well coached. Like, I have so much respect for that staff and what those guys have done there. It's going to be a good challenge for us. And I think with us, losing who we lost last year and them losing who they lost last year, there's going to be a lot of new wrinkles that we're not, that are unseen, that we got to be ready for. So it'll be a good challenge.
What or who has been the biggest surprise to you through camp to today?
Yeah, I think Townsend and Chase Owell are guys that, for being new, they certainly don't look new, and they're guys that have come in here and done really well in the spring, and they never leave the indoor, they never leave the training room. They're guys that are constantly watching tape. So for those guys to be new and to have the habits that they have, just our receiver room in general with Overby and Brett Eskildson and Daniel Jackson, he was on our Fiesta Bowl team here. Like, those guys, I think that room is one of the stronger rooms that we've had, I think, since I've been here with Coach Campbell. We've had some really good guys here, but what Coach Pauly does with those guys in that receiver room, it's really special. So I think just the flexibility that room gives us to be able to play and 10 personnel open stuff has been really nice. So I think those wideouts and they've done really well.
Talk about some of the open position battles that you've had on offense, like a couple on the offensive line. How's that looking like? You hit on the wide receivers a little bit, but what about tight end? How's that coming together? Sounds like Cooper Alexander's had a good camp, so look at that a little bit.
Yeah, tight end, you guys have watched this play. We're going to play a lot of guys. Bramer and Gabe have had exceptional fall camps. Like, those guys are trusted, and it's good to see Ben as healthy as he's been since his freshman year. Cooper Alexander was a guy that was dinged up last year that would have played as a freshman and has come in and had a great camp. Tyler Moore's got a lot of experience. He brings a lot of grit to that room and can play all the different spots in whatever personnel that we're in. Trip Walsh was a walk-on that played a lot last year. So we have a lot of guys that can play and are going to have to play and give us the flexibility to do so they have to know all the spots. So we'll play a lot of different people there. Inside of offensive line's another spot where we've rotated a lot of guys, and Boniface has played a lot of snaps here at flex tight end and center and guard and can do all sorts of stuff. Dylan Barrett's another guy that's played guard, played center. Brennan Black, the same thing. So those guys have all done a really good job. I have no idea who's going to start at some of those spots. That's, Clanton. He's constantly rotating, even in games. So those guys have all done a really good job. It's hard to rotate center, at times, especially with, the stability that we have at quarterback and changing cadences. But those guys have done a good job. The 2 O-line with whoever it might be, 3 O-line, they've done a really good job.
And then with Alex Mansky, we talked to Connor Moberly a few weeks ago or a week or two ago, but what have you seen from Mansky as we've gotten into camp here? And I would imagine probably starting to do more, pick up a little bit more since he missed the spring with the arm.
Yeah, I think what stands out to him is the preparation that he has to come in here, and I think we do a lot offensively. We do a lot of shifts and motions and trades and personnels and move people, and there's never a time where that guy looks lost. There's never a time where that guy's unsure what to do. There's almost zero MAs with that guy. So I think just the preparation and the confidence that he shows to go out there and, take control of the offense when he's on the field and, to be the field general and a guy that can, make sure that everything goes as planned is something that stood out to me. And then, how athletic that guy is. That guy can extend plays. He can run. He has, his arm strength is off the charts. So he checks all the boxes. But I think the biggest thing is just what that guy looks like when he's out there in our offense. You'd have thought that he'd been in the system for a couple of years for sure.
You talked about there for a second the cadence with the center and quarterback. With this game being a neutral site game, does that eliminate some of the stuff you guys would have otherwise had to do if this was in Manhattan with silent counts or anything like that? Does that streamline some of that?
Yeah, we've done a lot of homework on talking to the previous people that have played in this game on just what the crowd noise looks like, and we don't know necessarily what to expect. Like Kansas State's fans are some of the best in college football, and they'll travel well, and our fans, I know, will be greased up to the game. So from a noise standpoint, like we expect it to be loud, and we're preparing for it to be loud, and we'd rather prepare for it than have it not be loud. So we've went into it with the expectation that's going to be pretty rowdy and pretty noisy and pretty hectic. So how can we, be able to block out the noise and function the way that we want to function on offense?
With the tight end room healthy this year and a big strength, what do you anticipate being your best personnel? 11, 12, 13?
Yeah, I think that's a tough question. I like playing, with a lot of tight ends, but I think, like I said, with the wide receivers, I think for us to be able to play in some 10 personnel and spread some things out with all the wideouts we have is a good, be able to give the tight ends that we have a blow. So I think we'll probably be, a 11 and 12 personnel team that swings and plays in a lot of 10 personnel and has the ability occasionally here to sprinkle in a 13 or a 14 personnel, but it's going to be hard for us to keep, some of the speed and some of those guys off the field, I think. So, I'm biased as the tight ends guy, and I love those guys, and we'll definitely find a million wrinkles to get those guys the ball. But it's going to be interesting, You think you know what the strength of your football team is, and then sometimes it takes you through the first bye week or the first couple of games and see who your playmakers are when the lights are on.
When you look back at last year, how do you evaluate your first season as a play caller?
Yeah, I still have a lot of bitterness at myself just for, some of the games and calls that got away from me. And, the Big 12 championship game is something that I still think about probably too often. And for me, I'm so grateful to be the offensive coordinator with the staff and the kids that we had to be able to give back to Coach Campbell for everything that he's given me. But you look back and there's a lot of what ifs and, things we could have done different. And I'm happy for the success that the program and the fans and everybody had. And I still kick myself at times for certain things, and you never know what would have happened here and there, and you have to live with it, and that's fine. There's enough to worry about, going forward too. But I try not to dwell back on, last season. It's all learning opportunities and growth for me and our offense, and what can we learn from last year that, I can't do going forward, and, everything I can do to put our offense in a better situation.
With the K-State game usually taking place later in the year, how much does not having current 2025 film of them affect the way that you build a game plan for a Week 0 game?
Yeah, it's tough. You could chase ghosts a little bit for sure, because you play the mind game of they saw us do this, so they're going to prepare for this, but they're going to know that we watched them do this, so then they're not going to do this, and you can go into some crazy rabbit holes. For us with Coach Campbell, as long as I've been with him, it's always been players, formations, and plays, and through camp, how can we find out who our best players are, and how can we find good ways to get those guys the ball and let them go win games for us, because it doesn't matter if I'm calling the plays or who's calling the plays. We have really good players here that have to go execute, and how can we put them in spots to go have fun and be confident and make plays in some unknown looks where you don't know exactly what it's going to be. And we haven't always, got up to the best start here at Iowa State since I've been in here offensively. So for us, how can we learn from all those moments I just talked about and be able to go, get off to a good start?
So for a season opener, do you find that it's more interior focused, tailoring game plans to your strengths rather than worrying about what opponent may do or may not do?
Absolutely. For us, it's, how can we play into our strengths as an offense that we know coming out of camp, and who are our best players? How can we take care of those guys, get them the ball, and put them in spots to go be successful when you don't know exactly what the defense is going to look like? And there are some unscouted looks, and the situations that are coming, you might not necessarily know how they're going to line up in some of them. So it has to go back to what your foundations are as an offense.
Ben was hurt last year. Gabe really came on. How exciting is it for you now to think about the prospect of having both those guys out there, both fully healthy, and what that could do for this offense?
Yeah, it's really exciting. I know being here and being the tight ends coach for Chase Allen and Charlie Kolar and Dylan Sainer, and the thing that I remember, obviously they were good players, but I had so much fun with those guys every single day, and the preparation that those guys have, and just the moments that we have in the meeting room. And Gabe and Ben are on par with those guys just from being pros, and how they go and attack and support each other every single day, and just the love and care they have for each other and our locker room and our teammates. And they're guys that play every snap like it's their last, and they'll do whatever. They don't complain about anything. They're kind of like, Jaden and Jalen from a selfless standpoint. If they didn't have any catches and we won the game, they'd be the happiest people in Ames. And they'll go out there and block whoever they need to block to help us win football games. So I think just the selflessness that those guys have, the work ethic that those guys have to push each other and grow, and Gabe's growth has helped Ben Cooper Alexander's growth helped Ben. Tyler Moore's growth helped Ben. Ben, having success early has pushed the rest of the room. So those guys know what the standard is of tight end play here at Iowa State. And for us to be the best version of ourselves on offense, they're going to have a great season.
Sticking with the tight ends, if you look at Gabe Burkle's game logs from a year ago in the first 6 or 7 games, I think he had 1 or 2 catches for 13 or 15 yards. And then over the last 7 games when Ben was out, it was close to 300 yards receiving. How do you go about making sure that his production isn't dependent on Ben, or that he's able to produce along with Ben in the pass catching game?
Yeah, I think Gabe, kind of similar to Chase Allen, is like he's at the mercy of being one of the best on-the-ball blockers that we have here too. So he's one of the most trusted people that we have on the line of scrimmage. It's really tough to block defensive ends in this conference and defensive ends in football in general, and I think Gabe is exceptional at doing it. Steve O'Klotz was exceptional at doing it. So, playing into the strength of our offense, like I talked about, he's one of the best on-the-ball guys we have. We're lucky enough to have other tight ends that have other strengths and other receivers that we can play into those strengths. That doesn't mean that Gabe's not going to get plenty of touches, because I think the flexibility that he gives us is, we're not always running the ball when 84 and 49 were in. Like, we got better as an offense when we were throwing it more when Steve-O and Gabe were on the field. We weren't so predictable from a personnel standpoint. And Gabe has one of the best hands. He's one of the contested catches that guy makes, I think it injects a lot of confidence into Rocco, where it doesn't have to look perfect. But Gabe's one of the biggest people in Iowa, and he can go out there and make big catches. So for us, it's going to be fun to move that guy around and put him in spots to block people and make big catches. And he's earned the right to do a lot of stuff in our offense.
On the offensive line, Coach Clanton talked about maybe it being a little bit important to find the starting center before other spots, just so you know who the anchor of that offensive line is going to be. Where do you see that competition at right now between those 3 or 4 guys, and how does it affect who starts at guard as well?
Yeah, Coach Clanton's done a good job of breaking the snaps up with those guys and kind of having a 3-way split between right guard, center, 2 right guard of Dylan Barrett, Brennan Black, Jim Boniface, and allowing those guys to play center, play right guard, and then to be able to do some of the heavy stuff that those guys did in our offense. And he's challenged those guys to kind of learn the whole offense, where it's not just so specific to the O-line. And I think it's allowed us to have a lot of flexibility. And you have guys like Austin Barrett that have showed up in camp that have done really, really good. Rutledge is another guy that's done really well. So we have a lot of flexibility, and Clanton and Jackson Scott Brown do such a good job of never leaving the facility and working with those guys. And they do center school, throughout the whole year, and they're training all these guys to snap with both hands and all these things that are crazy. And they take a lot of pride in being the center. We put a lot on that position to make everything right. And those guys have done a good job in, providing a leadership role and, making sure they're taking good strides on our short yardage stuff. And they've all done really well. It'll be a tough decision for Coach Clanton for sure.
Where does Rocco need to improve most in 2025?
Yeah, I think no different than myself and the rest of our offense. There's consistency things here and there that are always challenging, and there's just a hair off here and there, and timing ways, and how can we put more on his plate to, from a checks or a kill thing like that, and be able to take control of the offense, which he did such a good job of it last year. So for us and, myself, there's a couple little things here and there. Can we be a little bit more detailed, or just a hair on this way with this throw and this read, or how can we make the play easier for him and accelerate his vision to play confident, because he's a master of everything that we throw at that guy. And Coach Waters has done a great job of just breaking down the inches of that guy from foot angles while he's throwing stuff way over my head, from a quarterback standpoint. He's another guy that doesn't leave the facility. Like, he's in there with Coach Campbell. He's watching it, wants to know what he thinks, comes down to our offensive staff room, wants to know, what we thought or what could have been better. He comes in and he does a really good job of taking accountability all the time, which is what you want from some of the best leaders on your offense. And for us, I want to see that guy, have fun and play confident and play loose, and I think that's when he's at the best version of himself, because he's one of the most fun people to be around. He's so competitive. He wants to win so bad. And how can we let that guy have fun and not try to be perfect all the time? And he doesn't have to be for us to be successful here. He could go be, the best version of himself, and we'll be fine on offense.
And I think of the trajectory of college athletes. Junior year is generally a year where, that's great for them. Is Rocco's development any different because he played so much as a freshman and sophomore?
Yeah, I think, I don't know if it's different, at least being here with Brock and he played a lot. I think the hard thing for those quarterbacks is there's a lot more pressure on the position now with quarterbacks, and even when Brock was here, which is what those guys have to go through, and you're being, recruited from other schools, and there's a financial burden that's involved in it now, and there's all these other things that college kids have to worry about, where it's not just, you're a college kid playing quarterback, and they have to manage that now. And Rocco's done an incredible job of that. He's so selfless. He's, like I said, he's always around. He cares about so many people. So, like I said, if we could just keep it about football and allow him to have fun and block out the noise of the expectations and the growth, he's really special. He's really talented. He's really driven. He could be one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and I think he keeps making strides to be that.